passive income, creating cash flows, and the way that we already have access to money that we didn't know we had access to because nobody taught us what was already in our current environment.
Welcome to The Path to Wealth, the show about well-being, fulfillment, and financial freedom. And I'm your host, Hannes Henty.
Welcome back to The Path to Wealth. Today we have Bryce Robertson from Cultivate. He has a masterclass on financial independence and freedom. He's basically done it himself in 2.5 years. So we will get into his journey on how he accelerated that for himself and how he's now helping other people to do it. Welcome to the show, Bryce.
Thanks, Hannes. Great to be here, mate.
So as you can hear, he's traveled far to be here in the US now as an investor. So you're originally from Australia, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So what brought you to the US?
Yeah. So, born and raised in Australia, I actually grew up in Brisbane, and then I got near the end of high school and I realized I'm not going to university. I knew it wasn't the path I was going to take. I was already bored with the education system and I wanted to go out there and make money. However, at that time I had no business or entrepreneur influences. So I didn't really know what I was doing. And I went out and got what I thought was the highest paying blue collar job because I thought that was my best option with the limited intelligence I had at the time. So I went out and got a apprenticeship as a steel fabricator welder. I did a 5-year apprenticeship in 3 years. And then after that, I moved out to Western Australia to work in the underground gold mines where I'd work for 12, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, 8 weeks on, 1 week off. And I did that for about 2 years in Western Australia and Northern Territory, earning as much as I could to save up a little chunk of money. Because in my early 20s, I had a dream that I wanted to travel the world for 6 years, and I did that. I didn't have enough money to travel the entire time. I just had enough money to get started. Here's how I did it. I left Australia. I went over to London, where that was my first base camp, and that was where I'd work. I'd work for like 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 to 7 days a week for a couple of months, maybe 3-4 months at a time, save up a little chunk of cash and go traveling through Europe. Pretty much until my money ran out, and then I would come back, earn more money. I work for a few more months, go traveling in Africa. And I did that whole UK, Europe and Africa cycle for 3 years. And after that, I wanted to change the scenery. So I went from 12 million people over in London to 5,000 people in a small ski village in a place called Fernie in British Columbia, Canada. And I really just went there because I wanted to do a snowboarding season. But then when I got there, not only were the mountains really freaking awesome and I wanted to stay there longer, I also realized they had coal mines just down the road. So I started my own little gig down the coal mines, and then I ended up staying there for 2 years. And when I wasn't working, I was firefighting, downhill mountain biking, snowboarding, or enjoying some kind of mountainous activities. And because I was so engrossed with what was happening there, I didn't really travel through that period, which enabled me to save an even bigger chunk of cash this time so I could go on an 18-month surfing and scuba diving trip down in Central and South America. And in the last 6 months of that surfing and scuba diving trip, that's when I met my wife, who's a native from California. And so naturally, I ended up here in the States. And that was about 13 years ago. And when we landed here in the States, we made an agreement with each other that we wanted to recreate this freedom lifestyle, except number one, we wanted to do it without our money running out while we're traveling. And number two, so our money actually is growing while we're traveling and having fun and living the freedom lifestyle we want to live. So we looked at the 3 main ways we can make big bucks. Number one, owning a business. Number two, real estate. Number three, the stock market. I also think that stock market category fits cryptocurrencies these days, but it wasn't really a thing back then. So out of those 3 categories, I chose about 7 different side hustles that I was going to work on. And I'm just like, one of these is going to stick. And then I realized after a little while, I'm having mediocre success across the board. I'm spinning plates. I need to take a step back. I need to laser focus on one thing and put all of my energy into that one thing. So I knew it was going to be real estate, but I didn't know what I was going to do in real estate. So I looked at all the different ways to make money. I looked at single family homes, wholesales, fix and flips, long-term renting, notes, self-storage, mobile home parks, other commercial real estate, the whole kit and caboodle. And over again, mobile home parks kept popping off the page. Massive supply and demand in favor of mobile home park owners, getting to fulfill what I believe is America's number one real estate problem, and that's the need for affordable housing. High cash flows, awesome tax benefits, better returns than other real estate asset classes, and relatively little competition as well. So I was all in. So I decided mobile home parks, that's my thing. Once I made that decision, 3 months later, I had my first mobile home park under contract. However, I wasn't in a position to get that deal across the finish line myself because I had a negative net worth. I only had $2,000 in the bank and I had unseasoned credit because I hadn't been in the States long enough to build credit. So I ended up leaning on family and friends to bring in the capital needed to fund the loan. And then I went out and negotiated with someone who had basically private funds through a retirement account to provide the financing for that park as well. So I got it all dialed. And then 3 months later, ended up closing on that deal. And when that happened, two things happened. Number one, I realized I could do bigger and better things collectively with other people. And number two, I realized there was major demand for investors to join deals where I'm doing most of or all the heavy lifting. And in our space, we call that syndication. So for the next 2.5 years, I rinsed and repeated the syndication model, doing bigger and better deals. And then after 2.5 years, became financially free. My wife and I retired ourselves, and we were no longer in a position that we had to work. We worked because we choose to, not because we have to.
Yeah. Well, you gave us a full download here. So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here, but one in particular, how does it feel to be in the gold mine the whole day? Like, I mean, that sounds just like terrific.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting. I wasn't working underground the entire time, but when I was underground, like you can feel the vibrations of the earth shaking and there's like rocks dropping. It's pretty wild. I think we were 1 mile underground was like, kind of the depth of where it is.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in a mine before, but more like a museum. It used to be a mine back in the day for ores and stuff. But yeah, I just went in there and that in itself was already like, okay, what's going on? I can't even picture being down there working all the time. So that must be a rough one. It's definitely a price for, to have the freedom to travel. You really earned that one.
Yeah. And I don't know, I think there's an adventurous part of me that liked it. I actually like being in caves and I like being underground. It's like I suppose it's a unique thing. I actually, years later, I ended up being a cave diver after I did my dive mastering course. And I did scuba dives where there's one entry and I'll go in there and then I'm scuba diving for 2 hours and then I'll turn around and come back and come out the same hole. And it's 4-hour dive and in really tight caves and have to take my all my scuba diving gear off to get through the tight crevices and stuff. So I kind of like that. And I think some people, not most people wouldn't really enjoy that kind of thing, but I get a little bit of a kick out of it.
Yeah. It's like, will I make it back through this piece of the tunnel?
Yeah, I think that I operate well in that kind of environment when I know that I have to rely on me to be able to get this thing done. And then it puts me in a really kind of calm space to be able to do what I need to do and focus.
Would you describe that as like a meditative space or flow state?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a very calm place for sure.
Yeah.
And I can find that place in really intense workouts too.
Interesting. So yeah, rolling it back a bit. I mean, I've kind of started my journey in a similar way. It's on and off, and then travel. So how can this become more sustainable? And I find it very interesting that you kind of went down the rabbit hole. Okay, I have all those side hustles. Which were some of the other side hustles that you actually, turned a blind eye into and were like, this is not going to working, and this is why I chose real estate?
Geez, we were trying to take over my wife's dad's construction company. It was like a carpentry company. We were trying to do fix and flips. It was foreign exchange trading, multi-level marketing, selling organic healthy coffees. And so there was all these very different things. And since I've been in real estate, I just haven't looked back. And I'm not just confined to real estate these days. I'm in other recession resistant asset classes, but our core focus still remains mobile home parks and self-storage.
Yeah. Yeah. So going to your first kind of mobile home deal. So how were you actually able to pull it all together without having the resources? You didn't have the credit, you didn't have the funds, but you already touched up on it, but I think more interesting than maybe the mechanics is the mindset to really go through with it, despite you knowing you don't have the resources.
Yeah. So I think the thing that did that for me is if I had have looked at all of the components that were required to get that deal closed, and then for me to sit there and figure out in the beginning how I'm going to do all of it, my brain probably would have exploded because there's no way I had the answers. And so I just took it one step at a time. And like the first step is get the property under contract. So cool, I did that. Once I got it under contract, what's the next step? I need to do due diligence and inspections. Once we got past the red flag stage of due diligence and inspections, it's like, now I need financing. Now I need capital to fund the financing. And so I just took everything one step along the way. All I focused on was like what the next step was, and that was it. And that was like an easy, manageable way for me to get through it. And then I got it through it and I got it done. But if I actually looked in the beginning and figured out how am I going to do all of this, it seemed very unlikely. And so one of the reasons I had a negative net worth at the time is because I just dropped like $36,000 on credit cards on a mentor and kind of like training program. And then I was trying to get this park under contract, and I didn't have an actual contract to use, like a physical mobile home park contract. And so I called up my mentor and I just asked him, I wanted him to like review the deal real quick and then see if he could help me with the contract. And I couldn't get a hold of him. And then I couldn't get hold of him. So I called the company. They finally get him to call me. And then when he calls me, he's like, tell me the scenario. Okay, you get this mobile home park. Okay, sounds like an okay deal. Cool. And then I said, yeah, but my circumstances are I have a negative net worth, $2,000 in the bank and unseasoned credit. And he said, say that again. And I told him again. And then he's like, you're dreaming, kiddo. It's not going to happen. You're never going to do this deal. You can't pull it together. Come back to the club and just do single family deals like everybody else is doing. And so I just hung up on the phone. And I never spoke to that guy again. I never called him back. That was it. I just basically threw $36,000 out the window and knew that that was the wrong path for me. I went and called somebody else who is actually involved in the mobile home park space and had success. And he said, run the deal by me again. Do you have it under contract? No, I don't. Why don't you have it under contract? I don't have a contract. Dude, I'm going to send you a contract right now. And that didn't cost me anything. And so, that really motivated me when my mentor told me, you're dreaming, kiddo, you're never going to do it. That just gave me like fuel and fire inside. So that really motivated me. And then how did we raise the capital? Well, we went out to family and friends and I thought, I've got a killer deal. This is going to be amazing. I'm going to raise capital very easily. And I had a really, really cold shower because the response was, who's this dude? Has he done this before? No, he hasn't done it. Why should I trust him? And of course, that's a natural response that people should have. I'm very fortunate that we ended up having a couple of friends, but really the friends weren't even my friends. They're actually my wife's friends. And they bought into the investment because of their trust in my wife and my wife's trust in me. And so really that's why they bought in. How we got the loan is there was somebody who already had a note that they were carrying for the seller of that park that had a very small portion of the ownership. And it was basically private investing through a retirement account. And so I asked the seller, I'm like, who is that? He's like, well, it's this person. I was like, can I talk to him? He said, what do you want to talk to him? I said, well, I'd like to see if they're interested in staying in the deal. And he's like, all right, you can. I don't think he's going to go for it. And I called him up and I said, hey, you like being in the deal? Yeah, I've been in the deal for 10 years. Would you like to be in the deal with us at a larger piece of the pie and provide more financing? And we ended up working it out.
Yeah. Do you still hold that park today?
No, we actually sold that. We owned it for about 4.5 years, maybe 4.3 years. Our investors that came to us, they said, if you can give us 12% returns a year, we're happy. I didn't really know how to structure deals back then. They ended up getting annual returns of 57.3%. So they were happy. Learned how to structure deals after that I wasn't like giving so much away, but that was a very successful deal for everybody involved.
Well, but maybe for the first deal, that's the way to go. You know, you give a little bit of the meat away and then you make everybody very, very happy. And, you know, after that, you can dial it back a little bit.
Yeah, I've looked like that all from the beginning. It's like, we're in this for the long haul. So, you know, we do the right thing and we probably give away a little bit more away than we should, but, you know, we'd rather have very, very raving fans and happy customers.
So for someone who is less familiar with mobile home parks, how would you kind of describe their value proposition as an asset compared to maybe multifamily or single family homes?
Yeah, well, I think the unique thing is that with apartments, you've either got vacant units or you've got occupied units. And obviously you want to fill the vacant units and you want to raise the rents and reduce the expenses and you put yourself in a better position. The thing that mobile home parks has is sometimes we'll have vacant units. We'll have a vacant mobile home. We go in there, remodel it, lease it up. But we also have vacant lots. And the vacant lots are really interesting because when you're buying a mobile home park, you're only paying for the occupancy. You're not paying for any of the vacancies. And so our special niche, I've got a 25-year plus background in construction and construction management. We do a lot of value add deals. So we buy mobile home parks at like 50 to 80% occupied. And then we go in there, we've got 3 in-house construction crews that rotate from property to property. And then they go in and take massive action and remodel all of the vacant mobile homes. We bring in other used or new mobile homes to fill the vacant lots and really crank up on the occupancy. And so we can, in our industry, we call that forced appreciation. We can force appreciation in ways that single family homes and apartments can't. If an apartment's to do that, they would have to build an entirely new building with entirely new utility systems, and the return on investment wouldn't be that attractive. But in mobile home parks, we can fill a vacant lot with a new home using third-party financing programs for an upfront cost of about $6,000 that gets reimbursed when we find a tenant. So we end up being in it for zero, yet lots in the Southeast right now are selling for like $50,000 to $70,000 per lot. So for temporarily $6,000, but it ends up being zero, we can actually make a future value of $50,000 to $70,000. You can't do that with single family homes. You can't do that with apartments. If we went for a used home, it costs a little bit more. We used to be able to do it for about $15,000 to find a used home, remodel it, bring it in, get it set up and put a tenant in there. But with all the supply chain issues and rising costs, it's more closer to about 25 right now, but still we get that $50,000 to $70,000 value on the back end. So that's kind of a unique thing that mobile home parks have that the other assets don't.
Yeah. There's also kind of a natural bottleneck to the industry, right? They're not really being zoned.
Zoned?
Well, in the sense there's no additional supply because nobody really wants a new mobile home park in their backyard.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Like, to me, it seems pretty clear that America's number one real estate problem is the need for affordable housing. Cities, counties, they're all yelling, hey, we need more affordable housing, but yet they don't want mobile home parks built, exactly like you're saying. And there's more than a 1% decline in mobile home park inventory. There's only about 45,000 mobile home parks to start off with. And that's declining by 1% each year because cities are closing down parks more than they're allowing parks to be built. So it's like an interesting, mobile home parks is currently the largest contributor to solving the affordable housing problem. But just by mathematical equation, there's absolutely no way that mobile home parks can solve the problem, because the problem's way bigger than the amount of mobile homes and mobile home parks that are available. So we feel really good about that. It puts us in a really excellent position for recession resistance. But I also think, just generally as a holistic comment, affordable housing, whoever can solve that problem in the coming years, I think it's a good asset class to be in. There's a lot of different ways to solve the problem. People talking about tiny homes and all these different things. I don't think the tiny home thing is going to make that big of a move. There's only a small percentage of people that want to live that kind of lifestyle, but there's a lot of new types of materials and new types of affordable housing coming to the table, and whoever cracks that code could make big bucks.
I've seen some 3D printing of entire houses, obviously not large scale houses, but on a scale where I think affordable housing would come in. And out of all the projects that I've seen, that those seem the most promising. If they can really nail that down, they can print a house in a couple of days. It's just there's no regulatory environment around that yet.
Yeah, that's pretty wild stuff. I think we're going to see a lot of innovation in the next few years, some by creativity and entrepreneurs who see the opportunity, and some just because we've got a problem to solve and someone's going to have to solve it. I think that even though we're already feeling the pressure economically right now, because I study macroeconomics, it's a huge part of like how we approach our investments. Even though we can feel the disruption and we can feel we're in a challenging time right now, we're only just getting started. It's about to get way more complex and way more heavy. So I think the need for affordable housing is going to be massively amplified in the next few years.
So just to give people some numbers here. So from different agencies, I've heard numbers between 3 and 4.5 million housing units short right now over the next decade. That's kind of the housing shortage we're talking about. So it's massive. And I think that the pressure on the lower end is obviously higher because nobody really builds for it unless it's incentivized by government. Mm-hmm. So, and as you said, we've just seen a discussion actually rather popular in the news where, I don't remember the exact name of town, but it's one of the towns in California in the Bay Area where there's a lot of ultra wealthy people there. And, there was some zoning for a potential multifamily construction. And they were like, we don't want this here because it's going to downvalue our properties. Mm-hmm. So because they have estates and they don't really have common living space there for regular people, and anything that's below their standard would devalue the area. And the same is true, I think, for mobile home parks. If you would place them in an area, it devalues the rest of the area, which is why nobody wants them in their backyard. Yeah,
it seems to be the sentiment of, because people are going to need a house. People can't stay in these like expensive houses. It's a problem already. There's already like tons of statistics of people that can't pay their phone bills. Think about that. Right now, in today's market, there's a lot of people that aren't paying their phone bills. How important are phones to people? Generally, even like small children have a phone, right? Yeah. When people aren't paying their phone bills, which is not a big bill either, that means that they're focusing on like survival already. And things aren't even like bad yet. So the need for people to downsize and go from more expensive housing to more cost-effective housing, that pressure is just going to push down on affordable housing at the bottom because everybody's moving down to that, or at least progressing in that trend. So we've got a lot of pressure for that.
Yeah. So then as someone who is in the space, do you think there is a way for you to benefit from that pressure, or your investors?
Oh, absolutely. So like right now, and we're not even in the thick of this, we've got waiting lists that are like astronomical. I think in the beginning of the year, some of our parks were about like 15 people, pre-screened people on a waiting list ready to fill vacancies. Some of our parks are like up near 70 right now. Like we literally can't keep up with the demand. There's a lot of demand. We put an ad up, we're filling homes in like minutes. We're moving to the wait list. So we're already starting to see that demand increase. And I can see it only increasing more and more. And I think self-storage is part of that too, because when people are moving, there's displacement. And when people downsize, maybe they don't have as much room. So mobile home parks and self-storage get to have a really good position through these recessionary periods.
So people are placing some of their belongings in storage units and then they're downsizing into a mobile home park. That's how the...
Or maybe they're not, maybe they're coming from like, C-class apartments to mobile home parks, or maybe they're going from A-class apartments down to B-class apartments and B-class apartments down to C-class apartments. But, the whole movement of that is pushing the pressure downwards, which means that there's more demand for mobile home parks at the bottom and self-storage. And the displacement is like self-storage.
I mean, an example from the cities is just a couple of months ago, the average rent in Manhattan was over $5,000. Obviously, that kind of pressure pushes all the way down, and then people move to Queens and other areas, which brings the pressure up in those areas where people that were already displaced they're getting pushed further out. So there's a lot of blue collar workers, so it's nearly impossible for them to work in the city proximity or live in the city proximity rather, unless there's affordable housing.
Yeah. And so usually we raise our rents about 5% in the mobile home park space, but now it's like 20% plus all day long, because there's so much demand for affordable housing that, rents can really raise very significantly in the mobile home park space and be very well supported.
Yeah. And it's a very interesting space, the mobile home park. Like, we haven't deployed any money there, but I'm always keeping an eye on it. So, and what are you doing in your kind of mastermind group? We've touched about it in the intro a little bit, but tell us a little bit more about what are you giving people on the way?
Yeah. So, it actually started when I became financially free. I looked at 20 years in the construction industry, didn't have much to show for it, didn't really like my position in the industry, didn't enjoy the ride that much, as opposed to 2.5 years in real estate, loved what I did, created financial freedom and turned my life on its head. At that point, I became really compelled to share my story with other people and help teach people what I did so they can recreate some kind of version of freedom in their life to suit their needs. So I started teaching about mobile home park investing. I started doing bus tours and to mobile home parks I owned. And then I started doing 1-day, 2-day events. And I did the same thing for capital raising as well. And that all started, 6-7 years ago or something like that. But when I more recently, with all of the things that have been happening economically and people realizing the whole need for financial freedom was never as amplified 5 years ago. People were more sidetracked with other things. But in a very short period of time at the beginning of this year, a lot of people came to me and they're like, hey, Bryce, this whole financial freedom thing that you've been talking about for years, I want in. I want to know about it. Can you teach me about it? And so I started having these one-on-one meetings with people and trying to help them out. And I'm like, I can't do this. There's way too many people that want this and there's way too much to cover. Let's get everybody together. And so basically what I did is I took the last 10 years of my life, I took hundreds of thousands of dollars that I have spent on self-education and millions of dollars of risk capital that I've put out there to prove all of my concepts. And I got all that wisdom and I compressed it into a 2-day course called Financial Freedom Mastery. And in the beginning, we go where we need to go first, and that's to our mind, because we need to get our head straight before we can do the rest of it. We need to put ourselves in a financial success mindset. And so we spend the first 2 hours of this program literally reprogramming our financial mindset for success. And that alone is worth the tuition. That literally has people in tears, and they just have a massive paradigm shift and they see life completely differently. And they didn't know how heavily programmed they were by school, society, parents, people, and how much of that is actually working against them being financially successful. And then, for the rest of the first day, we're actually digging into all of what our schooling system didn't tell us. And they didn't tell us for a reason, because we go to school to fit into the system and to end up being an employee so that we can fulfill this societal systems that they wanted us to create. But like 3 feet outside of that, as I proved in 2.5 years, we can become financially free. And I think someone who does it at a moderate pace with a full-time job, who's not even like putting that much effort into it, could achieve financial freedom in 10 years. If you're more aggressive, you could do it in 5 years. And if you're super aggressive, you could do it in 2 years or less. And so this is really, really attainable for people. But yet most people think you have to have money to make money. You have to have connections. You have to have experience. Clearly, I didn't have any of that. A lot of my colleagues and peers didn't have any of that. I know stories of people that were in way worse positions than me and are now in way better positions than me financially. So we hold ourselves back with a lot of this, and we're going to uncover the real wisdom that's behind understanding financial markets, understanding how the money game works, understanding a portfolio diversification, money management, how to figure out what your financial freedom target is, how to figure out the difference between active and passive income, creating cash flows, and the way that we already have access to money that we didn't know we had access to because nobody taught us what was already in our current environment that people already have access to, that wealthy people know and wealthy people share with people in that environment, but our school system has kept from us because they want to keep us in the system. They don't want us to be free and independent because then we don't need them. So basically that's what we're uncovering. And we go through that into the second day. And then on the third day, later in the second day, we actually uncover 20 asset classes that we are currently involved in and or have our eye on that we're going to be joining in the very near future that we believe are not only recession resistant to weather the storm, that they'll actually thrive and be abundant through all of these economic changes that are actually happening right now. And the whole point of every single course that I teach, it's not for me to stand up there and give a tutorial and for people to write notes. The whole point is every student literally designs their own customized financial freedom mastery game plan based off their specific needs and circumstances, because everybody's in a different position. Everybody's got different goals. And so we're through 14 wealth exercises, we're actually literally designing each student's financial freedom master plan.
Yeah. So what are some of those 20 recession-resistant asset classes that you could share with the audience?
Well, I mean, I'll obviously mobile home parks and self-storage. We've already talked about that. Yeah. I'll give away one secret and then we'll save the other ones for those who come to the course. Car washes is actually one of the asset classes that we're super excited about right now because it's a super underutilized space. Very rarely is there people in any country really, and especially in America these days, that washes their own car. It just doesn't really happen. People take their car to car washes, and the largest operator in the car wash space only has 300 car washes. It's a really, really untapped market. A lot of the car washes are coming up to time to be renovated and remodeled and add new technologies. And so there's an amazing opportunity to essentially kind of fix, flip, rebrand, and up-level the car wash industry and make it more subscription-based. And we're really excited about that space.
Yeah, it's funny that you said I've been looking more at car washes lately and kind of how the subscription model, really changes the valuation of those, and that it's definitely an interesting space, and I think people will do less and less of those things themselves, like the services around their house. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you go just outside of New York, where there's a lot of those estates, anybody who's a hustler can build a business there in no time because nobody does shit anymore. So,
outsource it all.
Yeah, everybody wants to, and there's a real shortage in people servicing things. Mm-hmm. So I could totally see how that squeezes into the car washing too. I had no idea that the biggest company only has 300 car washes.
Yeah, it's so untapped.
So what is the total market of car washes? How many hundreds of thousands car washes are there in the country?
That's a good question. I don't have that. I know that I've heard that statistic. I know it, but I don't have it fresh on my mind right now. But it's insanely untapped market.
Got to look into that one. But I want to go back to the mindset, because what you said there is super crucial. And anybody that listens, people get stopped by their own fear first before anybody else or anything else stops them. It's really such a crucial piece of the puzzle. So where do you start in your class, or when you mentor them? Where do you pick them up, and what is like the first brick wall that you break down for them, where they might have a belief that doesn't serve them?
We basically go through them. We start off with understanding what the manifestation process is, which is our thoughts lead to our feelings, lead to our actions, lead to our results. So if we want to change our results, we've got to reverse engineer that. And it comes back to changing our thoughts. The reason I believe most people aren't financially free, it's not because they can't. It's not because they're not in the position to make that happen. It's because they literally don't believe it's possible. So, and because we've been programmed by all of these false statements like you have to have money to make money, money doesn't grow on trees, you can't be, wealthy and spiritual, and all these kind of BS statements. And what we literally do is we go through all of these main statements that are out there in society, and we dissect them and break them apart and actually uncover and show the truth behind each statement, how they're all false statements and what the actual real true statement is. And I'm not going to give away too much there, because it's a really, really exciting process, and it's really, really powerful.
I think especially the part between, this being successful and spiritual, I think that's a very interesting one, because, the truth is, if you want to be a billionaire, if you want to be really well off, you just have to figure out how to serve 1 billion people. Like if you can create value for so many people, which in itself, at that level, it can become a spiritual practice.
Yeah. And unless you're someone like Mother Teresa or Gandhi, and let's get real, everybody's got 50% positivity and negativity. We all have a positive side and a dark side to us that comes up. People know Mother Teresa as being this amazing person, and she has some amazing qualities about things that she did, but she was also tax invasion and extortion and a whole bunch of other things that are true about her as well. But unless you're somebody like that didn't have a ton of financial backing, like Gandhi and Mother Teresa, those guys made a big movement without much money. But most other people, if they really want to make an impact on the world, it takes funding. If you want to help homeless people, you've got to be able to fund that kind of thing. If you want to build church, build schools. And so making money and making more money is going to make us more of who we are. If we're an a-hole and we make more money, we're going to be even more of an a-hole. But if we are altruistic and we want to make a positive impact in the world, and we're scraping to get by each month, we're pretty limited on the impact we can actually make. But if we're financially free and we've got extra money to be able to fund projects that are going to go towards the vision that we have to help the world, then that's a really cool position to be in. I think that's a very spiritual component, because it allows us to do more of what we want to do in the world.
100%. And I always emphasize that I believe that, when people have choices and make their work optional, they become better servants of their family, of their community, and ultimately have a better impact on the world. So I'm going to also pick you up on these lines. And so what is the impact that you want to have on the world?
Well, it comes down to freedom. I mean, my philosophy is living the life of freedom trinity, which is financial, time, and location freedom. You've heard a lot of people say, I want to do what I want, when I want, with who I want, from where I want. And that's freedom. I think we could go another layer deeper and say that real true freedom is spiritual freedom. But in the material world, financial, time, and location freedom puts us in a position where we can literally do what we want. And so the first piece is becoming financially free, then freeing up our time so that we can have the time to do the things we want to do outside of creating wealth, and then being able to do that from wherever we want to be. I can't remember why I started talking about this. What was the question?
Well, I asked you what the impact you want to have in the world.
Yeah. So the impact I want to have on the world is, in a perfect world, for everybody to live the freedom trinity. But I believe not everybody's going to go that far. I want as many people as possible to understand first that it's possible for them to live financially free and to just live financially free. I've gone way beyond financial freedom, and I'm going to continue doing that because I really enjoy what I'm doing, and I'm serving tons of people, and I'm getting to help more people. But the average person, financial freedom is enough for them to be in a position where their passive income coming in monthly is paying for their monthly living expenses. That's it. You don't have to work. Yeah. Now, when you're in that position, now you can make decisions from your heart and your soul. You don't need to make decisions out of necessity because you don't need to put food on the table because it's already taken care of. Trust me, if you're not financially free, it is so different to be able to make decisions based off your heart and your soul and have that freedom, and then be able to like spend time with people that you want to do and do what you want to do in the world. So it's my wish for as many people as possible to come financially free. And the reason I say as many people as possible is because I believe everybody in America could be financially free, no matter even if you're a homeless person right now, because plenty of homeless people have gone to be millionaires and beyond. But who's going to actually do the work that's needed? And I know it's not going to be all people. So that's why I say as many people as possible, because I know as you know, I could share this with everybody on the planet, and there's only going to be a certain percentage of people that are actually going to take the action on it. So as many people that we can to live in that position, especially where we are economically right now. The future of people who are living paycheck to paycheck is a future based off my very extensive research on macroeconomics and all of these games that are being played behind the scenes. It's a future that's very far from freedom. It's like, hey, we can help you out. The system can help you out at the exchange of giving some of your freedoms away. And so financial freedom has never been more important. If you actually want to make decisions and choices from your heart and soul, or if you actually right now, if you're not financially free, you're making them from out of necessity, but in the future with what's coming, I'm scared that most people in that position will be making decisions, not only out of the necessity of what they need, they're actually going to be making decisions of what the system's telling them to make. And that's not cool. And so I want as many people to live free. That's really the main mission here. And if people can go beyond that and make more money and help more people, that's great. But I just want, we live in America. This is the land of freedom. I wrote a book, 10,000 Miles to the American Dream, with a couple of 7 other mates. We're called the Real Estate Mates. It's our story of financial freedom because we came from Australia. We traveled the world. We ended up here, created financial freedom 8 different ways through real estate. And there is no country. I've been to 60 countries and I've lived all over the world. There is no country that even closely compares to the freedom qualities and the ability to be abundant as America. So let's lean into that and let's live that life and let's live free in this abundant country. And right now, there's so many Americans that aren't actually tapping into it. They haven't seen how challenging it is in other countries and how easy it is here to get a head start on financial freedom.
This is so true. What you're touching up right now. There's and I think I said that on different episodes already, but there's a sense of entitlement I sometimes get from younger people here. And I'm like, do you understand that you are on the golden playing field? It doesn't get better than here. Just go to Europe or elsewhere. The hurdles, the loops you have to go through to build that level of freedom or wealth that you can do here. It's not there. And that's one of the reasons people are coming here literally in the millions, because it's possible here. But
and I can't blame Americans because, it's the system in which they grew up in. And if they haven't been outside of this system and lived and traveled in other countries, they're not going to see or experience how challenging it can be in different areas. I'm not saying there isn't challenges here. There's challenges here, but I'm saying to become financially free, this is the best place. Easy, hands down. In Australia, if you want to buy a house, you have to put 20% down. You can't put 5% down, 3% down. And seller financing is almost unheard of over there as well. So very different environments in different places. yeah, I mean, I'm really compelled to like wake up Americans. It's not their fault. They haven't known that they haven't tapped into this because it's been easy and it's been comfortable, but that's being disrupted right now. And we're about to find out that this whole prosperity way of living and living in abundance is about to get cut off for a lot of people. We're in a really large, complex, worldwide financial, economic, health, social problem. And there's a lot of pressures in a lot of those areas, and people are already flying by the seat of their pants and very easy to take out. So the more people that can understand, hey, this is something we need to take action on, and hey, I can do it. I live in like the best place, the best environment to be able to do it. The more people we can wake up, the better.
100%. I agree. But the thing is, even if you and me would literally give everything away in public for free, which I mean, we're basically doing on the podcast anyway already, the majority of people don't take action on it. And Gary Vee, I mean, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He's been saying that for like a decade. He's like, I can give you all my secrets. I can give it all to you because most of you won't do anything. And that's kind of the sad part about it. So you have basically the environment in which it is possible. And actually the information is out there for free. You and me, we like to collapse time frames because we pay for education, and we are getting in the right rooms with the right people who have the mindset and who want to go there faster. Mm-hmm. But all of the information is out there in the public. I started educating myself in the public library in New York City, which was for free. You know, the internet, YouTube is full of information. But the reality is most people won't take action. And so we kind of have to work with who's willing to run with us.
That's true. And that's why I had my comments before. And I'm not going to choose who those people are because I never know. And I host an event and I could scan the room on the first day and go, I think these ones will be successful and those ones won't. But how do you know? You don't know who's going to take action. So I just want to like reach as many people. And then maybe there's some people that'll hear what we've got to say, hear this conversation, and maybe they're like, yeah, that's cool. I'll lock that away in my brain and I'll think about it later. And then an event will happen in their life, or someone else will say something and they're like, man, I need to go back to that conversation with Hannes and Bryce. And I need to touch on that again because I'm realizing the importance of that. So, you know, maybe some people aren't ready yet, but we're opening up a doorway and then they'll join a little bit later on. And especially with all the things that are going to go down in the next few years, it's my belief that more and more people are going to want to jump on board and try and figure out ways how they can claim their freedoms back or expand their freedom.
Yeah, 100%. So Bryce, one of my favorite and usually final questions is, what does it mean to you to have a life well lived?
It's of utmost importance, man. Like I think about that on a daily basis. I think, am I using my time effectively? Am I really living the mission that I should be living? I think it's super important. People could say we get one shot on planet Earth. Other people could say we get multiple incarnations. Who knows? We're here and right now. I don't want to waste my time. I think it's important to live purposefully. I also think it's important to leave a positive impact on the world. And if you look at all the myriad of ways we could do that, there's an abundance of opportunities for us to live that and step into it.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Bryce, thank you so much for your time. I feel like we could go on and on, but I want to be respectful of your time. Thanks for sharing everything. And I mean, I don't think we've had anybody yet who's been down in a gold mine and then literally build his own gold mine, with his mindset and everything. So it's an extraordinary journey. Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, the best place is freedomtrinity.com. That's the best place to find out about our financial freedom mastery course. If you want to check out a company and learn more about what we do, learn about what else we've got to offer, go to investcultivate.com. And cultivate is spelt with the number 8. So it's CULTIV, the number 8. So investcultivate.com, and you'll be able to reach out to us from there.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. This was awesome. This was different and very exciting. And thank you for your time.
Beautiful. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you for joining us at The Path to Wealth. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Check out our upcoming guests and be sure to share it with all your friends and family that want to take their life to the next level of wealth.